If I Were King by A.A.Milne, 1882 to 1956. I often wish I were a king, then I could do anything. If only I were King of Spain, I'd take my hat off in the rain. If only I were King of France, I wouldn't brush my hair for aunts. I think if I were King of Greece, I'd push things off the mantelpiece. If I were King of Norroway, I'd ask an elephant to stay. If I were King of Babylon, I'd leave my button gloves undone. If I were King of Timbuctoo, I'd think of lovely things to do. If I were king of anything, I'd tell the soldiers, I'm the king. Okay, this is another kid's poem by A.A.Milne. He's the author of Winnie the Pooh. He came from Kilburn. One of his teachers when he was young at school was actually H.G. Wells, the famous science fiction author. Okay, so this poem, this is a child saying, if I were king. So notice, if I were king, without thee, this is King of England, King of Great Britain. But if I were king of, and this is the child imagining, yeah? And if you look, the first line, I often wish I were a king, and then I could do anything. So he's got this idea, the child has this idea that kings are omnipotent, yeah? Kings can do everything. But I think the child is also viewing kings as in the same light as viewing an adult. I often wish I were an adult, then I could do anything. So I think a king is like a magical creature, a magical being. But then being an adult is a magical thing from the point of view of a child as well. And then he imagines all the crazy things that he could do if he were a king. If only I were King of Spain, I'd take my hat off in the rain. Okay, so I'm sure his nanny has said, put your hat back on. You can't go out. You can't be out in the rain without your hat on. If only I were King of France, I wouldn't brush my hair for aunts. You've got to brush your hair because your aunt's coming. But I hate brushing my hair. Okay, he wouldn't have to. He could refuse to do it. I think if I were King of Greece, I'd push things off the mantelpiece. So I think probably somebody here has been telling him, don't do that, you'll knock things off the mantelpiece. Yeah, so just be quiet, be responsible, don't jump up and down. I think the mantelpiece is the shelf that goes over the fire. And I get the feeling that this mantelpiece is in one of the adult rooms downstairs, not in the nursery. If I were King of Norroway, I'd ask an elephant to stay. So I love this Norroway. This is Norway. Yeah, but this is mondegreens by children. There are all sorts of things that children say that they don't get quite right, yeah? And he says if he was King of Norway, or Norroway, he'd ask an elephant to stay at the house, because he knows the adults would never let him have an elephant in the house. If I were King of Babylon, I'd leave my button gloves undone. Okay, so clearly he's got some gloves with some buttons, and he's not allowed to put his gloves on and leave them undone. I think probably his nanny's saying, do your buttons up, do those buttons up on your gloves. And he wants to be independent. The child wants to be able to decide what to do and what not to do, and not to be always in this position where You've got to do this. You can't do that. You must do this. You mustn't do that. If I were king of Timbuctoo, I'd think of lovely things to do. So I think Timbuktu is a place in the Sudan. In English, Timbuktu is a place that is lost in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. He lives in Timbuktu. Timbuktu is a place that the English imagine is really, really far from anywhere. It's actually interesting that most languages have different places for Timbuktu. Yeah, the British say Timbuktu, but I've heard the Spanish never use Timbuktu. Maybe they use Pernambuco, or different languages use different places for this. If I were king of anything, I'd tell the soldiers, I'm the king. Okay, so he'd tell people, I'm the king, I can do anything. And I think this poem is really about a child's desire to grow up, to be allowed to decide what to do, to be in charge of the child's own life. So, enough. If you enjoyed the video, give it a rating, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you soon. Bye for now. If I Were King by A.A.Milne.